it feels like there's a lot of stuff in this budget that, we're going to change this, we're going to change that, we're going to change all these things. Doesn't really make a difference for a certain amount of people. A lot of banks are just moving on from trust or not doing trust lending.
You only have to Google, how many builders, how many, professional trades actually declared bankruptcy from COVID till now.
Everything was pushed towards builders, and the builders it's not like they're sitting on their asses doing nothing at the moment.
If you and I owned a building company, fixed price contracts in this market, I would not want to sign one.
We're all going to sit there on our hands, on our asses in our hands and do nothing, and the budget will just, next 2 years will just produce nothing.
You're a smart man, Brodie. Jeez. Yeah, that's a good solution. Hey, you want to go into business together? Or I'd say that. Brodie, episode 1 after the budget. So we've had the chance to dissect it as best we can. I'm going to throw it over to you now first. You're going to go through some stuff that you've come up and you've seen where people can capitalise, maybe more so from a tax perspective and strategy perspective. And I'm going to go after you. I'm going to run through some particular property areas, locations and property types that I think are probably going to be really good investment vehicles in the future. Back over to you, Brodie.
Cheers, mate. Since the last couple of days, a fair bit more reading and chatting to some experts in the field, knowledge far beyond ours. But got some good info from some builders and some accountants. As much info as we can get at the moment, because there are still some areas of grey in the legislation from what we've seen. And those guys have kind of mentioned a few different options that what we did touch on at the end of the last podcast or part 1, where, what are we going to potentially see in terms of structuring and how that looks, and done a couple of side-by-sides on some, like the current structures around, how, when I say structures, the entities holding the properties and how they kind of look now post 2028, actually, because there is this rollover period I'll touch on, and then as the company as well. So the first thing, probably in the last couple of days, I've noticed a lot of clients who are sitting just sitting on the sidelines, as we have mentioned, leading up into the budget, have pretty much acted or started to act a bit more than they were probably thinking they would. Everyone kind of knew what was getting rolled out in the budget. There wasn't any dramatic changes, and we've found a lot of clients coming back. They've changed their direction a little bit, but at least now they know. So it hasn't, probably in the last 2 days, hasn't cooled anything off or hasn't changed anything. In fact, it's kind of almost business as usual, because a lot of these changes aren't getting rolled out for the next, realistically 2027 into 2028. So, which is a good sign. Everyone's kind of taken it, whether they agree with it or not. They're moving again, so that's good. Had a lot of questions from clients, which we kind of can't. Again, we don't answer, or we don't know the full extent of the answers, but given some sort of initial thoughts. So one of the main ones we touched on, the structuring, is really we're more than likely going to see a whole lot of people just disregarding trusts now, because one, they're kind of an additional layer to set up, which costs money, needs accounting advice, needs all this sort of crap that goes with it. And most people generally have like a corporate structure on top, which is a company anyway. So probably take the trusts out. Not going to touch on unit trusts. They're not really being touched. And people will start buying in companies now. And I did a little bit of a side-by-side on a husband on 100,000, wife on 50,000. This is PAYG income, and then 50,000 in rental. So the current trusts, whether they apply the 30% floor rate that will come in, whether they apply the distributions now as they are or a company, literally the tax is all the same, 48,000 across the board. So it feels like there's a lot of stuff in this budget that, we're going to change this, we're going to change that, we're going to change all these things. Doesn't really make a difference for a certain amount of people. So to take all the complexity out of it, we're just going to see a whole lot of people buying in company structures. And whether you have that company structure as the one thing you can't do is you can't have husband as a shareholder and wife as a shareholder, one each, and then distribute a little bit to the husband and more to the wife, like you currently can in a trust. It has to be even across. So if you were to distribute that rental, it would be 25,000 to the husband, 25,000 to the wife. In those situations, probably just see the wife as the sole shareholder. So, and the director is irrelevant, kind of thing.
All power to the wife.
Yeah, that's right. Owns the rental and gets the rental income.
Be careful what we do. That's right. But better be a good husband, be a good partner.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, we'll see company, and to be honest, like, we've got our own personal structures, and they're complex, and it's going to be simpler, in my opinion, to do it. So, and the accountant that, like, I spoke to our accountant, and they've been kind of giving that advice anyway. And what we've seen probably recently, it's just simpler. There's a lot of issues that we've seen from a money laundering point of view, from a lending in the lending sphere, that a lot of banks are just moving on from trust, or not doing trust lending, especially discretionary trust lending. So it's almost a thing of the past. I think it's almost it was almost a big headline for something that's not going to change a lot, in my opinion. So companies will definitely be the way to go. Turning to other professionals in the industry, builders. So this is really where
Actually, Brody, if I can just interrupt on there and just ask you a question, just your thoughts on that for a moment. So any of these structures currently, let's say for clients or people listening who have trust structures where they purchase properties, they built their property portfolio in these structures. I know this is speculating, but just want to give your thoughts. Do you think that there will be some kind of intervention from the government where it'll be, hey, you can move your portfolio across over into a company structure without actually, say, triggering a capital gain, and maybe that capital gain is frozen based on when they originally bought the property, and then the new rules kick in, and obviously they still pay their fair share, the stamp duty, sorry, is the other big thing. So and also won't particularly trigger another stamp duty event. Could you see something like that happening? I mean, we've had that question off camera a couple of times already. What's your thoughts, just generalised?
Yeah, and that's probably the key point, because they are, from the looks of it, they're allowing a restructure period without any capital gains, as long as, effectively the ownership is in line. So the beneficiaries become the shareholders around that kind of ethos, I guess. But the stamp duty is the big thing. So stamp duty, as we know, is a state-based charge. It's not a national charge. So that would be the concern if you transferred, $3 million worth of assets across. There's a significant amount of stamp duty there. The state governments haven't really said what they're going to do or what they're not going to do. But the budget has given a 3-year, I think it's a 3-year grace period to move, from a trust over to either when I say trust, a discretionary trust or a family trust, over to a unit trust or a company. The thing is, we kind of had this, just like you said, had this discussion off camera. That 30%, it's really only, that 30% floor rate is really only affecting the people that are kind of earning in around that sort of, nothing, as in PAYG income, to then maybe like 120,000. Beyond that, you're almost getting to that 30% anyway in your distributions on top of your PAYG income. So half the people we probably won't even see roll it over, or not half, but a lot of people we won't see it roll over. And the other people, that the tax difference might not actually make a huge reason to change that over, because if they're not getting a massive amount of rental income as a distribution, in terms of like maybe 5 or 6 tax difference for what it's going to cost in stamp duty, they probably won't change. So again, it's probably one of those scenarios. If the stamp duty gets scrapped, we'll see a lot more. But if it doesn't, people will probably just leave it.
Yeah, fair enough. Thank you. What were you saying about builders?
Yeah, so builders is probably where this budget was geared towards, or construction, as we know. They're allowing negative gearing and whatnot, or negative gearing to continue for new dwellings. It's all about supply, creating supply. So I asked a builder that we work with quite closely, and after I'd seen what the HIA and the master builders, so your two sort of governing bodies, membership bodies for builders across Australia, they didn't seem too stoked on the budget, and I kind of wondered why. And I asked, this builder and another couple, and it really comes down to a similar sort of thing in COVID. Like, everything was pushed towards builders, and the builders it's not like they're sitting on their asses doing nothing at the moment. They're trying to build. They're trying to build as fast as they can. Now it's a push towards building again, like we saw with all these grants. What does that drive? Oh, well, tradies are going to put their prices up. The materials are going to go up. The builders are going to have to increase their prices, in my opinion, and these guys' opinion. They're going to have to cop this. And now it's almost the government's put the responsibility on the builders and the building industry to say, you need to fix this for us. You need to build these, extra dwellings. But they haven't actually incentivized, apart from, the infrastructure cost we did touch on in the last episode. They're not really actually helping the individual builders. They're not helping with grants for the builders or anything like that from what I've seen. And it's now, all right, builders go out and fix that. Like, they're not building they're building as fast as they can already. The other difference now, if we compare this to the COVID boom, the construction boom, we had a lot of fixed price contracts. A lot of builders right now, especially with the oil crisis and whatnot, they are very anti fixed price contracts, and I totally understand why. And they are, once bitten, twice shy. They're not coming across and going, yep, no worries, we'll solve this problem. We'll do fixed price contract. They're cost plus, and as we know, there's very few lenders that will actually lend. So if we're looking at the people that need lending for a cost plus project or a building project, there's only a handful of lenders that will do it. And that's the same with modular. Any of these solutions that you'll probably touch on that are good, very good solutions, there's lenders.
I might just jump in there. Sorry, every time I try and make a note, I'm on the so my computer has a Michael Fox moment. So cost plus, so just explain everyone what's cost plus. So fixed price contract, I think that's fairly self-explanatory. Yeah, you go to build, you get your contracted as a fixed price, whether materials or labour goes up or down, it's a fixed price. But what's cost plus?
Hey guys, Darren here. Money in the Mic is part of Fund. Fund is a team of highly skilled mortgage brokers and finance professionals who are pretty much scattered in every state and territory across Australia. So by all means, if you want to know more information about anything said in the show, or you've got a personal question or anything, please scan the QR code on the screen or go to the show notes and you'll find some more information how you can connect with us. All right, thanks very much, and back to the show.
Yeah, so in that fixed price, there's obviously a builder's margin. Like, anything you're buying, it's got a margin built in. You buy a bottle at the shop or 6-pack at the shop, it's got a margin. Same with a fixed price contract. That's your cost to the builder, and they've got their margin. So with a cost plus, it's literally, again, in the name, it's cost plus the builder's margin, and they're very transparent. And generally with the cost plus, builders are a lot more transparent with their cost, because you're as part of the contract, and I believe the regulators or those governing bodies stipulate that you have to mention those costs plus your margin. The thing is, if those costs go up when the builder goes to buy them, say, concrete went up $4 a cube or whatever it is, that cost now goes up. And, potentially that plus on top, that margin goes up as well, depending how the contract's written. So it's good for the builder, shelters the builder, but it's not so good for the consumer. And when you go to a lender, you based all your serviceability and everything on a specific figure. If that goes up 20, 30%, the lenders aren't, they're not very flexible on it. So, they're
lending
kind
perspective.
of
I mean, just sorry to interject there. On a lending perspective, we could see that, right? If you're approved for a limit of say 500,000 for your build, and then you've got this contractor to go, hey, look, if it blows out, you just got to pay it. The lenders being the one who's paying it, then I can understand where they go, hey, look, we can't approve that because, we've got our own rules to meet. This particular, Mr. and Mrs. Client actually can't afford 650 under our rules, under our borrowing capacity calculator, so it doesn't make sense. So, get it from the lender's perspective, get it definitely from the builder's perspective. If we circle back to when it was, but I guess probably targeting, and I want your thoughts, targeting more so on the lender's perspective. If we think back in COVID times when they had a fixed price contract and all these builders had to go, they went bankrupt, they exited the industry, they couldn't complete the builds, and then either another builder had to interject, something had to happen. There's quite a bit of chaos. We won't go through all of it, but I guess your thoughts on what is a happy median there. What is the solution? If a cost plus, is it a cost plus with a cap? Like it's, hey, look, cost plus, but look, it's the cap's up to here, and then the risk is shared, or the bank onboards a risk, or X, Y, Z, or what's I'm putting you on the spot. We didn't speak about this off camera, mate. So what would you think would be? Oh, good. What would you think would be a good solution?
Yeah, obviously. Well, not so obviously, but obviously enough for us. We know that the lenders assess on, 3% over the actual rate that you're being offered. So, generally speaking, if a lender came on board, they could potentially, well, they can't potentially unless, going through a whole lot of hoops with our governing body. But for construction, if they really want to get on board, they could lower that buffer slightly, even though the rates, that assessment rate, they could maybe go to 2%. The other thing is, as we see a lot in development lending, is contingency in the contract. So basically, if you've got a cost plus, you need to build 5% contingency in there for those changes. And if it's, again, the builder has generally always got some contingency in. If a lender then, puts a bit more in, it's going to still be hard. There's no perfect solution in this scenario, but if you've got a 5 to 10% contingency in there for those rate rises, those cost rises, and your buffers, you're fitting in that buffer, there's probably room for that to move. And at the end of the day, you as the client are going to pay more money, but you're also, somebody's got to pay the bill. So that's probably a shared risk model I see, like you said, we haven't discussed this. That's what I kind of thought straight off the bat. Probably it meets in the middle.
No, I think you're a smart man, Brodie. Jeez, that's a good solution. Hey, you want to go to business together, or I'd say you're right. So for the listeners, what is that, or what is the assessment rate? So typically, when we say as brokers assess your borrowing capacity, if the rate, let's say your lending rate at the bank is 5%, the bank typically applies a 3% margin on top of that for affordability, right? So it applies it at an 8% rate and bases your affordability, based on all your incidentals, your income, your liabilities, your existing expenses, like everything. So we assess your ability to repay the loan on 3% on top of the actual rate. Now, what that does, essentially, if the rates go up 3%, then you should technically still be fine to meet your repayments. Key thing there is, like, throughout COVID, rates were as low as 2%. Now they're at mid 5, 6. We're starting to get higher. So they're starting to really push over those assessment rates. So that's why that 3% rate is built in there. So I guess what you're suggesting is somewhere in the middle where, hey, maybe on a construction loan application, that assessment rate is, it's still probably 3%. And let's just say that Mr. and Mrs. Client, that comes out a $500,000 build, just for easy maths. However, if a cost plus contract does blow out, then you've got this additional amount based on, say, a 2 or 1.5% assessment rate, which gives you another, let's just say 50, 60 grand on top of your existing build contract, where the bank will go, hey, we will stretch your borrowing capacity to go to 550 or 560. That'll enable you to complete the build. Your builder gets paid, you get your home, and it's still within. Obviously, they're going to have to make an adjustment to the rules, but it's still within your capacity to repay the loan. It does put you at the higher echelon because you're now not, covered by 3% over your base home loan repayment. So, and then on top of that, like you said, a built-in premium, so 5% contingencies on your actual build contract, somewhere in the middle. So a shared risk scheme that's brilliant. hopefully we can get that up to the people that make the rules and see if that's viable, because this, no doubt, if you and I owned a building company, fixed price contracts in this market, I would not want to sign one. Like, I just simply, it can play into your favor, of course. Like, let's say if the war stopped and everything went down, prices went cheaper, yada yada yada, whole other factors. Of course, it could play into your favor, but right now, that hasn't really happened favorably for the builders. That's a big punt. Not a punt I'm willing to put any sort of money on. So, look, I agree wholeheartedly with the builders. They've had a tough time. They really have. We're talking about the industry as a whole and trades as a whole. They've had it's been a hard slog sort of since through COVID. People probably just look on the outside in and go, hey, look, there's so much business around. They've done really well. But you'd only have to Google, how many builders, how many, professional trades actually declared bankruptcy from COVID till now. And you would find between 2021 and 2024 it was a massive number, certainly around Victoria. So I think that cost plus solution with a contingency in, we can share the risk with the client, and the bank is, a possible viable solution. So that's really good.
Because it's not just going to be, it's not just going to be the builders. Like, the builders aren't going to wear this, and the building boards aren't going to wear this. So it has to be, this is a huge, in our opinion, systemic issue with migration and cost of living and cost of investment, cost of everything. Everyone's going to have to share more risk than they want to in a risky market. It's just going to happen. It's going to have to happen one way or another, or we'll have this policy roll out and everyone's going to go, yep, I'm going to invest in I'm going to buy new property, or new properties, new built properties. Nobody's going to give them any money for it. We're all going to sit there on our hands, on our asses in our hands, and do nothing. And the budget will just, next 2 years will just produce nothing. So I suppose on that note, in terms of builders, do you want to talk about, let us know what things we could build and what would be good investment stats?
Yeah, good segue. So, look, as you know, again, there's been so many different sort of segments of the property market and different iterations of build types and whatnot. So one thing I want to particularly shine a light on, so you may or may not have heard of, I'm talking obviously to the podcast here, is like the types of rooming houses and boarding houses. So they're in the building code, it's a class 1B structure, I believe. Don't grill me if I got it a little bit wrong, but class 1B structure, where essentially it isn't considered a class 1A structure, which is a standard residential dwelling.
Shocking.
Yeah, shocking. A, B, don't make me go beyond C. So essentially, I guess the good thing, and look, rooming houses really started to come in to play for the greater market in the last sort of 4 to 5 years. And as a overview of what a rooming house is, so from the outside in, so from the facade from the street, and if you were driving through the neighbourhood, you really couldn't tell any different. The facade essentially just looks like a normal property, right? So you're looking at the house, looks no different to your neighbour. Inside that particular property, there is shared living space in terms of like 1 or 2 living areas, as well as a full kitchen. But within, let's say, 5 bedrooms, you've got a full like studio apartment. So you've got your bedroom, you've got a kitchenette, you've got a shower, a toilet, you've got everything. So essentially, you can exist in your little bedroom, essentially your studio. So that's all within one house. So it's 5 particular rooms. They call it a rooming house. That's a class 1B structure. Now, look, do they solve a lot of problems? Yes, they do. The problems they solve is, if you look at a lot of people, say, renting, right? They go to a rental property, a standard property. Let's say it's 3 or 4 bedrooms with 1 or 2 bathrooms, standard house like it is normal. The people going through there looking for that rental, you're going to have a family that goes through. You're going to have a single, guy or girl. You're going to have couples. You're going to have everyone that sort of goes through. A rooming house takes out a lot of those people who are just single or a couple that probably only need 1 or 2 bedrooms, and they can instead live in something like a rooming house where they've still got their individual and their privacy, but there is, if they want to, I guess they can be communal and they can share in living areas. Now, I say this and people listening are going to go, oh, I wouldn't want to do that. It's not for everyone. It definitely isn't. It just is something that doesn't take up a lot of space. It still looks similar to a property. It won't change the facade of your neighborhood. And essentially takes out, let's just say if it took out 4 or 5 groups of people who otherwise would individually have a 4-bedroom house each and underutilize the space, and puts them into one particular area where they're happy to live in, reduces their costs, they share a lot of cost, solves a lot of problems, probably gives them a nicer property, and then also enables the, say a family or a big, with more people, it doesn't put them to compete with one another. So a rooming house is quite cool. Now, I guess the downside we see from a lending perspective is they're treated commercially. So when we go to fund clients' loans where they build a rooming house or they buy an existing one, the capacity to borrow is a lot lower, so your deposit is a lot higher. The valuations are more expensive. It's harder to get in particular councils. Again, it's not a Class 1A structure, it's Class 1B. Not every council is going to enjoy them. You're not going to see one pop up in the middle of Noosa. That council just flat out wouldn't put one in there, and I dare say, ever. But you're going to see in other areas, probably areas where they're not as affluent, and there are issues where there's probably, and Noosa there'd be vacancy issues, but certainly. If I'm looking at the Sunshine case, you're more likely going to get one approved in Nambour than you are Noosa. So they're great, but the problem is, they're not for your everyday investor, your average investor, or entry-level investor. They're not that viable in terms of, having the deposit, having enough money to get in there. A better sort of interim or a solution, not an interim, but a solution where it kind of meets in the middle. So they've been producing these properties. Victoria's kind of led the charge on this, but they're still considered Class 1As. Typically, the rules are they can only have a max of 3 bathrooms. They can have 4 bedrooms. So essentially, they can have these kind of like a rooming house has, but only 3, right? And then you've got, for some reason, they don't let the 4th bedroom have its own bathroom. Don't know why, they just don't, all right? And that's just in their building code. So you can typically have a 4-3, then with a garage, of course, or an extended garage. So they get treated, they get valued like a standard residential property. I mean, they still look and feel like one, but they do have the ability to have sort of 3 studios throughout there. It actually does suit a family that, it's not to separate them, but like it does suit a family because not every family dynamic's the same. So you might have an elderly parent, you might have older and younger children, all this sort of stuff where it actually does just create a better living scenario. So we find, they've been increased in popularity in the last sort of, I'd say 12, 18 months. They started as a concept. They're now very much a solution. Again, Victoria, like if you're wanting to look at these sort of solutions that, if you sort of Google co-living solutions or, even if you go into realestate.com and you looked at particular areas and you just put a 4 and a 3, 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, and you sort of just selected new, you'd see some of these pop up. That's not to suggest to say that those areas are particular, the ones where you should invest in, but those property types. The other advantage is from an investor's perspective, you're going to have a higher degree of rental yield. So you'll typically attract anywhere from sort of you probably want to go as 5.5 to about a 9%. I know that's a wide ranging yield, but just depends where you place this property. Typically the room is rented out on a per room basis quite often. And there are there are rental agencies that specialize in this kind of thing. So, so you're going to get a higher yield. You're going to get depreciation benefits. So we know in the budget that's just come out, we know that there's a lot of tax changes. We went through a lot of this before. They're not touching new builds. This is a new build. So typically if it's a turnkey solution, or if you're buying the land and building, then obviously it's a new build. If you do buy an existing one, by the way, this will be treated as an existing property.
Well, there's potential on that, and that's probably one of the a question I got from a client in the last couple of days is, if you are increasing the supply, so say if you bought one of those old Queenslanders in like Aspley or something like that in inner city Brisbane, and you did create another bedroom on there, a full renovation, like a full structural renovation, there's potential that could be classed in this new build.
Yep. And that's a chat we've had off camera a couple of times, haven't we, bro? So it's something we do need to dive deeper on and get some clarification. Like when something like a budget comes out, I think a lot of people take it as verbatim and act as those rules of, they've just gone in, they're definitely going in, nothing's going to change. But you'll find it's almost like if you read the terms and conditions, you'll find that will vary slightly from what they actually come out on budget night. So there'll either be, and that's based on either public feedback or second or third revision, or opposition party going, hey, look, even if they've got power enough to change it, and or making suggestions. So on that one where you bought a house and you're actually adding another bedroom or significantly renovating it, then we'll wait for that distinction. If it is counted as new supply and we can get those additional benefits, then that could be great. On that, it probably leads into the next sort of segment, and that kind of just pretty much what you've just played in on. We've been seeing this for a while. We funded a lot of properties that are, let's say they've just got their existing home, then they've built a granny flat in the back. So you've seen this in a lot of councils, certainly around Queensland and WA. That's not to say other states aren't the same, they are, but those two particular states especially. So where obviously you've got to have enough room and space, but again, for the kind of change in family, all the difference as your family grows older. So those particular properties will have another degree of appeal, if you want to call it that. So a dual occupancy without becoming like a rooming house. So we've got the main house and you haven't got an attached granny flat or anything, and that you can build that. Or you've got just the blank canvas, you've got the land, and you're wanting to build those two dwellings, and you just do it from the outset. So it wins because it actually ticks the box for a family, a growing family, an aging family, or a family where you've got more than one need, where it's just under one roof probably isn't suitable. And you've also got the appeal of say it not be a family, you've got the appeal of let's say you rent that out to someone, you can rent that out to two different lots of people. So two income streams, which diversifies it. Again, better depreciation, stronger yield, but you've still got the family flexibility. And broadly speaking, the resale appeal is just going to be just as good as it always has been, or probably better. So those segments, so we've been asked a lot in the last couple of days about, particular properties and property structures. We think those two in particular are going to be, they're not going to lose any shine. The one that I just spoke about before, the Class 1As with the additional bathroom, the capability of the individual living, I think that has got traction. It's now more than traction. It's come out of first and second gear, and you're kind of top gear, and it's smashing down the hill. So councils that are favourable to it, they're going to get a lot of support. We've been saying this and we know this. We've been building, we use a lot of data and metrics about where we think these particular areas are. So we look at growing regional hubs. We look at these types of builds. We look at the builders. We look at, where it makes sense, where it fits, where we think it's a good investment. We've built a lot of this data and put a lot of this stuff together. So in the coming few weeks, probably to a month, we'll compile this report. We'll let you guys know how you can access it. It's free. We're just going to give anything on this podcast, but essentially just going to pass it out for free. So take and do with it what you will. We're still working on it. We're still making sure that we really want to highlight where we think the next and the current property spots are, why we think they are, and go from there. So check out the future episodes. This report will become available, like I said, 3 to 4 weeks time. Access it totally free, and do with it what you will. Bro, did you have anything you want to add on the back of those couple of things?
No, not anything to add, but it'd be good if anyone's got some questions that similar to ones we've been asked throughout the last couple of days about anything, even if we can't answer it now, we'll get some more information on it. One I did get, actually, I'll touch on, is our client's got a current principal place of residence and he is planning on renting that out, not not for the next 12 months. But then his question was, does the grandfathering apply to his current property for negative gearing? So at the moment, it's kind of based on ownership. It's not based on whether it was rented, as far as I can see. So that's kind of a rule we're going to have to wait for, and whether they do say, it had to have been rented or available for rent or whatever on budget night, that still might change. Like you said, that policy might change. So just little questions like that, just shoot them through, and they're good questions for us to know in our business anyway, but also, other people jump on and answer things, and everyone will get some more clarity soon enough. But nothing else from me, mate. That's good. Good wrap up.
Yeah, good wrap up. Always good to speak with you.
Oh, like and subscribe.
Drop your credit card number in there as well, and where you live, and all of the things. Make sure we get it all.
And if you got a 5 better, let us know where it is.